Hi everyone, welcome to Homespun, where creativity and community come together. I am your host, Misty Doan, and today I'm joined by Tian Connaughton, a talented knitter, crocheter, designer, and tech editor. Tian has a fascinating story of how she made the jump from corporate finance to pursuing her passion for handmade crafts. She's here to share her experience and her determination to create wearable garments that fit every body. Hey everyone, it is Misty. Welcome to Homespun. This week I'm here with Tian Connaughton. Tian, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. I'm so glad you were able to join me. Can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Well, in the year 1970, I'm just kidding. I am a knitter, a crocheter, designer. I tech edit patterns. I like helping other knitters and crocheters really find their own style and find clothes that fit their bodies. I started out crocheting and knitting accessories, things like that, blankets. And then eventually, I started wanting to wear things that I made.
Yeah.
So then I ventured into creating sweaters.
What got you knitting in the very first place?
In the first place, I started crocheting.
Oh, okay. Crochet was the entry point.
The entry, yes. I learned from a coworker.
Okay.
Way back when I was working in corporate. I'd just gotten married, came back, and this new woman was working there, and I'm like, who's this new person trying to take my job? She wasn't.
Yeah.
But she was always in the break room crocheting, and we would watch TV, but she'd be crocheting and watching TV at the same time. And I thought that was really interesting that her hands were still moving while she was focusing on
I am envious of that
conversation.
skill.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wanted that. I wanted to have a hobby because I didn't have one back then. And we went to Walmart one day, got some yarn, got some hook, not the fanciest stuff.
Yeah.
And I was literally hooked from there.
I love that. I love that. So for how many years did you just strictly do this as a hobby?
Oh, for years. So I started in 2001. I didn't start knitting until 2006-ish.
Okay.
My mother-in-law, she knits a lot. And she, for years, wanted me to learn. Ever since we got married in 2001. And I was like, I'm okay with one hook. I don't need two needles. Those are complicated. Like, what is that? But I was home with my son when he was 2.
Okay.
And I started to watch Home and Garden Channel Nitty Gritty show. Because when you have a 2-year-old, they don't do a lot. And I was bored. And I thought, well, let's try this needle thing. It looks cool. The fabric is very different than knitting. And I started watching, started playing with it while he was taking naps and things like that. And it was just like another gateway, right? So I had that one trigger with crochet and then knitting, and it just exploded from there.
So do you have one that is your true love more than the other?
I don't. They both have their own place, right? For crochet, I love to make blankets and stuff like that. Big projects. For knitting, I like anything else.
Yeah.
Because the fabric is so different. It just depends on what the project is.
Okay.
I choose which one I want to do.
So I have another question for you. Since you seem to do both quite well and frequently, I have heard that if you learn one before the other, that it makes learning the other one difficult. Like if you learn knitting first, it's harder to learn crochet and vice versa. Did you find that in your life?
I didn't think that for myself.
Really?
I thought it was similar traits.
Okay.
Right? It's just a needle and a hook, or
you're still just manipulating
it's just
yarn.
manipulating yarn, pulling it through the hole, and right. So I figure if you know one, then it's a little bit easier to understand the concept of like where the yarn is going to go.
That makes sense. I understand that. So someday I will learn to crochet.
Okay,
I learned to knit. My grandma taught me how to knit.
I'm gonna hold you to it.
I hope so.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm gonna send you some yarn.
I would love that. I hope we can, cross that hill together.
Yes.
And I
will
can
hold your hand.
confidently get there. So tell people a little bit about your passions as a designer within knitting and crochet.
Yeah, so my passion now at this very minute is sweater making. Okay. I'm really loving the idea of wearing clothes that fits my body, that I can go into the yarn store, pick out some yarn, and come home and with a hook and some string or needles, and I can make something that I walk out into the street and people are like, "Ooh, I like that. Did you make it?" And not in like a snarky way.
No, but there's something really exciting and wonderful about that. It's a little bit of pride in the work that you've done, and there's nothing wrong with celebrating that.
Yeah, and you walk a little different. You kind of hold your shoulders back and you're like, "Yeah, I made this and it fits me."
Exactly.
So well.
I know when you walked in today, I immediately complimented your beautiful sweater, and you said,
"I
made it." And it's absolutely gorgeous. And there is something really amazing about having something that fits you, which leads us to your book. You have this great book, Cardigans for Everybody. And I love this because everybody is worthy. So do you want to talk a little bit about this?
Yes.
I would love that.
So the idea of the book is that I want everybody, not just everybody, but every type of body to be able to see themselves in handmade clothes. When I started out knitting and crocheting, patterns weren't in my size. And I'm not like a huge person, but I can imagine someone who's bigger than me going into, a yarn store and looking for patterns and never seeing their sizes. So I wanted to create something where no matter what you look like, I don't care if you have narrow shoulders, wide shoulder, big arms. I played sports, so I have large upper arms.
You're strong.
Exactly.
Yes.
This body has done a lot.
Yeah.
Right. So I wanted to be able to celebrate that instead of always putting myself down. It's like, I need to lose another 10 pounds. No, this body has done a lot. It birthed a whole human being.
That's right.
So I wanted to celebrate that and show other women, men, non-binary people, if you like a pattern, you don't have to follow exactly what the designers say.
Yeah.
You can go out and adjust the gauge, you can adjust the yarn, you can adjust where you want to flatter and not flatter to achieve your perfect fit.
Yeah, that's really intriguing to me. I mean, I'm very tall, and so finding things that fit me is quite challenging.
Yeah.
I have long arms, a long torso, and so I can completely relate. So the idea of being able to see something that I like and know how to make the tweaks to that would be really wonderful. And so you go into all of that.
I go into how to find the pattern you like. There are 4 patterns in the book, to knit, to crochet, just to give you some sort of idea of like jumping off point. But you can use any pattern you see out in the world. And I teach based on the idea of start with a swatch. Swatching is not punishment. It's information. So start with a swatch, see what fabric you like from that swatch, from that stitch pattern and yarn combination. And then with some simple math that I walk you through in the book step by step, because I know a lot of people don't like math.
That's a dirty word for a lot of people.
I know. Swatch and math, I get into fights over those. But I show you exactly how to use math and your swatch information to make tweaks to the pattern. Because if you're tall, you're going to want your sweater to be a little longer.
Yes.
And then if you've made adjustments to that sweater, how much yarn are you going to need?
Right.
Because now you're not following the designer's instructions, so you don't have their numbers. So now you have to figure out, am I going to play a yarn chicken? Or do I figure out the math to know exactly how much yarn I need?
I love that.
And I show you all of that in the book.
That's so valuable. So much information. And you've just put it all in here in a digestible way that people can understand and then apply to their project, which is really, really cool. So is there something that you would recommend for, like me, who I've done some basic knitting, I'm dangerously bad at crochet, like it was rough, but is there something that you would recommend if they've never worked with yarn? What would you say start here?
Some folks say start with like a scarf or a blanket. I say, what do you want to make? Right? What do you want to wear? Because if I'm telling you to make a blanket and you're not feeling it, you're not going to finish it.
Right.
But if you're like, oh, I want to make socks. Okay, let's start with socks and let's work through it step by step. Or if you want to do a sweater, it's possible. I don't want to limit folks to like just like do washcloths or do squares. Do whatever you want, because there are tons of tutorials out there that will walk you through it. It's just a matter of what do you want to do.
That's a great point, because you're way more likely to stay and be committed to the struggle of learning through it if it's something you're excited about. I love that thought. That's really, really cool.
And knowing that there will be struggle either way, I might as well end up with something I'm going to like anyway.
Absolutely.
Right? Instead of just another scarf or another blanket. And there's nothing wrong with scarf and blanket. But if that's not what you want to make, you're not likely to finish it.
No, it's true. Sometimes because I've made so many washcloths now, I will just knit a washcloth really quick. It's almost like a palate cleanser for my brain, but it doesn't excite me. And so having a project that is actually exciting and interesting, like that's always what brings you back, right?
Yeah,
and that's what you want. You want to keep creating and keep making new things.
Yeah, I wonder if you would be interested in making socks. Like just get some colorful yarn and...
I know I would be interested, but it's a little scary.
It's all scary.
Yeah.
I mean, you're going to be scared anyway. You might as well end up with something you like.
I love that. I love that attitude to just dive right in. Well, and honestly, it's interesting how, like for me, I work mostly with quilting fabrics, and I'm comfortable now with the process of learning and creating and messing up. Mm-hmm. But the idea of yarn is a little scary. But Sarah Delaney reminded us today, like, it's just yarn. You just pull it out and start over.
Yeah.
And so it's true. There's a lot of freedom there, and just learning as you go, which is really exciting and fun.
Yeah. So I'm not a quilter. What would you have me try? Would you say, oh, it's too much, don't do it?
Oh, never.
Exactly.
Absolutely not. Yeah. And so I think that it's the same in that regard. And I, as a designer, am always looking for things to be functional and useful. And like, if I'm making it for something, I want to think about them and their needs and what they might like. And I think that applies to both crafts, you know, and just making sure that we're excited about what we're working on. And I would ask someone the same thing. Well, if you want to get into quilting, have you seen something you like? What excites you? What are you interested in?
Yeah.
So same concept.
Yeah, and I like to tell my students whenever I'm teaching either, you know, business related or craft related, you know, just look at your historical data. Have you been a failure your whole life? Likely you haven't. You have some proof that you've actually succeeded at some stuff. So whenever you're feeling kind of like, oh no, I'm going to fail. Is that true?
Yeah. And is it the worst thing?
And it's usually not.
It's usually not.
It's just yarn. It's just fabric.
Exactly. Okay. And so you touched a little bit about your business background. Can you share some of that and what you do?
Yeah. So I have a background in corporate finance. I worked in it for about 8 years. The last company I worked for was a big company, international, and it was... And my position was eliminated. It went overseas. Got my what's the word?
Severance package?
Got my severance package because I live in Massachusetts at the time. This was around 2012. You could just buy insurance off the market. So because I carried the insurance, it was a little easier for us to transition from like, oh, well, you're getting laid off. You don't have to go back to a job right then. My son was young at the time. He was about 8. So it was a time for us to really think about what do I want to do next?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about that every single day. But at the time it was like, okay, my son is little. He's in school. What kind of parent do I want to be? Do I want to go back to corporate, or do I want to pursue knitting and crocheting a little bit more than what I was doing in the evenings?
So can you tell us a little bit more how you transitioned to have this be your career?
Transitioning is still happening after what is it, 12 years, 13 years? It's still an ongoing process. But I think for me, it was using my corporate background and just really figuring out what business do I want. I still don't know exactly what kind of business I want, even though it's been over a decade. But it's about really thinking about what kind of life do I want. Like I said, my son was little. I wanted to spend more time with him. I want to be that mom that went to all the games and embarrassing him, right? And I really kind of figured, how can I have this business work around that? So pattern making, right? Knit and crochet patterns. I could do that in the evenings. I could do that while he was in school. Then I started doing some tech editing, which is me looking at other people's patterns and checking it, making sure it was correct. I was lucky enough to get some really great opportunities to work with big manufacturers, yarn companies, and help them with their patterns. So it was a matter of just like one step at a time.
Yeah.
Start with a few patterns, get really, really good at those, make some sales, then try to figure out what else can I do. So I added the pattern making, then tech editing, and then business support for other designers.
Tell me more about that, the business support side.
Yeah, so I love this part because a lot of us creatives are not business savvy.
Right.
We go into this as a hobby, a love,
A
our
free
baby.
spirit.
Free spirit doesn't pay the bills.
No, it
right?
doesn't.
So I really look at it as, yeah, you can still have all that fun bit, but let's think about what works in your business. Taking a more critical look at what do you want your life to look like? That's the first step.
Yeah.
And then figuring out what's working in your business right now. So if you have 5 patterns and only 2 of them are selling, you might really love the ones that aren't selling, but you really have to like look at it and think, okay, the ones that are selling, let's focus on that. Let's make some money. And then we can transition to other things. One of the things I teach my students is about a CEO day, not just working in your business, filling orders, making all the sales, but really thinking about taking a day to sit back and look at what's working in your business. What marketing should I be doing? What outreach should I be doing to other businesses? And thinking about collaboration, not just what you can get, but what you can provide to the industry. So it's really about blending financial savviness with, okay, I love this, but is this actually working?
I love that idea of taking a step back and having that CEO day, because I know it's so easy as a creative, whether you're running your own business or working in a creative field, to just kind of get your head down and get like so hyper focused on the day in and day out. And so that's a great reminder to kind of pull back and refocus and think about what's ahead.
And you might not be able to do a CEO day. Could it be a CEO hour?
Yeah.
And you're just looking at your books. And don't be scared of your books. When I started, even though I came from a finance background, looking at those numbers were scary when you started seeing those negatives. But if you don't look at them, then you don't really know what is working and what you should be pursuing. So even though it's scary, please look at your numbers.
Yeah, if you don't identify the problem, you can't solve it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
That makes great sense. So is there anything else that you, since you have made the leap from, a corporate professional to a creative professional, what would be your like number one recommendation for someone making that jump?
Number one recommendation. I would really have you go back to your why. Why are you doing this? And also, what is your vision for the future? Sure, you want to make money, but do you want to be able to stay home with your kids? And if you do, what does that look like? Do you want to be quilting or knitting and doing all that stuff 24 hours out of the day and then not really seeing your kids?
Yeah.
So then once you figure out your vision for the future, then you can go out and look at opportunities that fill those gaps.
Absolutely.
Like collaboration or working for a big brand or whatever else. But you have to start with your why and your vision for the future and then bring it all together.
So what was your why?
My why was my family.
Yeah.
I wanted to not commute an hour and a half one way every day, or some days when it was really snowy, be stuck on the road for 3 hours, and my family not really knowing what's happening.
Right.
So when I had the opportunity, the great layoff, it was just an opportunity to think about, now what? What do we want to do? What do we want to do as a family?
Yeah, and refocus.
Exactly.
I love that. That's great.
Exactly.
So can you tell me a little bit about the adjustment for your family as a whole, for your son or your husband, as you made that transition to being home more?
Yeah, so my boys really love it because they come home to a hot meal. Most days I still do takeout quite often.
We're human.
Yeah, exactly. But for my son, him seeing me be a entrepreneur has really pushed him to want to become an entrepreneur. He has a day job, but now he's thinking about what else is possible, because there's not a lot of entrepreneurs in my family or my husband's family. We just see people going to work, coming home, and just, that's it. But I think for me, I wanted to leave that legacy for him where he can just pursue whatever he wants, right? He can go out and he can say, hey, I want to try this, and try it. Yeah. And know that he has that security blanket at home if he needs to come back and, readjust. But I want him to be able to go do whatever he wants to do. And when I have an idea, we sit at the kitchen table, I kind of present my ideas, not for approval, but to let them know what I'm thinking so that he can see how I'm thinking through different parts of my business.
I love that. And what an incredible example for him in his life to see you make that leap for the things that matter to you. And to figure out how to make that work for your family and your life. I think that's really admirable. And I'm sure it will bless his life
I hope so.
for years to come.
I hope so. I just want them to be able to see something and to pursue it and not just think there's just one way to live, but to go have adventures. You want to be a rocket scientist? Go for it.
Yes.
You want to be a Twitch star? Fine. It's fine.
It is, right? If it's bringing him joy and it lifts him up and provides a fulfilling life, I think we place a lot of judgment and criticism on things that are really not necessary, especially if it's not affecting us day to day. If it's not hurting us, then why can't we just be encouraging and cheer people on and
exactly
and let them figure out their own path? Because I say often, if someone had asked me in high school if I would be teaching quilting as a profession, I would have said no. There was no part of me that thought, even though I learned to sew with my mom and my grandma and spent so many times doing that and I loved it, it was nowhere on my radar. And if I had been so fixated on that thing that I thought I was going to do, I wouldn't be where I am now.
Exactly. So. And that's a great message for folks who are thinking about transitioning either by choice or by situation, that, just because you think knitting and crocheting and quilting is silly, it doesn't have to be.
No.
Why can't we just be silly sometimes? I don't think we have to be serious.
Absolutely. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with doing something that just makes you happy, fulfills you creatively, and challenges you in new ways?
Exactly.
That doesn't feel like the end of the world if you make a mistake.
But as a business coach, I'm going to bring you back to your numbers and to
absolutely.
Have your eyes wide open, but still have fun.
Yeah, I think you can have both.
Exactly.
And that's the beautiful part of it.
Exactly.
So to circle back to some of the things you cover in your book about sizing and making patterns fit for you, can you share maybe some of what you've learned in the industry about why patterns are written the way they are and how they came to be, how the sizing is the way that it is? Just share some of that knowledge if you don't mind.
So that's a big pet peeve of mine. When you're knitting, when you're designing garment or pretty much anything, there are standard sizing, right? The Craft Yarn Council, they do an amazing job having very size inclusive information out there.
That's good.
However, there are people who just don't fit into those standards. Of course, there are patterns out there that you can find that range from like a extra small to like 6X, 7X. But as a tech editor, when I was working with a lot of designers and yarn manufacturers and people who are making patterns, I was finding that they were just using incremental increases for a size. So they might grade a pattern for extra small and then just add numbers for the other sizes, which wouldn't really make sense. So you'd have like a sweater for a person that's small that fits them perfectly and they look great as a model. But when you got to like the larger sizes, the sleeves are super long. The armhole is like down to your waist because as you're increasing the chest size, they're increasing other numbers.
Oh, interesting.
Which made it not fit people who have real bodies. And my question used to be, do these designers actually know people that are bigger sizes to know that just because my chest is a certain size, that doesn't mean my arm is like a gorilla's arm, right?
Yeah, it's a real human trying these on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when I started this book, I was really thinking about the people I knew who were struggling to find sweaters that actually fit them. Sure, the pattern said it was size inclusive and it went up to a 6 and 7X, but when you look at the numbers, you look at the schematic, it didn't make sense, right? They would have this neckline that just didn't fit. The shoulders were just off. And I wanted to not just provide more patterns for people to follow. I wanted to give them a template to say, hey, these are some of the things you really want to think about when you're making sweaters for yourself, right? So maybe you think about how you want the sweater to fit. Do you want it to be snug? Do you want it to be oversized? Because just because you're a larger person, that doesn't mean you want a sweater that's a muumuu.
Exactly.
You might want it to be,
you can still have clothes fit you.
And
Absolutely.
look like it fits you.
Yes.
Right? You might want to have a crop top. Even though you have a belly, who cares?
Who cares?
Right? So you might see a sweater that's published that is for a larger person that just looks like something your granny would wear. And there's nothing wrong with grannies. I love grannies, but that's not what I want to wear.
Sure.
Right? So the idea is I want you to look at your own body. I want you to stand in the mirror, see what you look like, and figure out where do you want to add more ease, which is more room in your sweater, and where do you want to be more snug. Maybe you have narrow hips and you're like, oh, I want it to like snug in, or maybe I want a peplum or whatever.
Sure.
And I want you to be able to just look at your body, wear the sweater you want, and know that it fits you, and not just be big on the shoulder and just blah.
So I can imagine that like that process was very frustrating in the moment, right? Trying to find things that fit and constantly not getting there. So what was that process like as you actually worked on the math and the design to make it work for everybody?
Yeah, it was a matter of just having conversations with folks on social media. And really all the work I've done with working with other designers and yarn companies, tech editing their patterns to see this doesn't quite work. This works really, really well. And now I'm not telling you knit this pattern or crochet that pattern. I'm saying find a pattern you like and then
here's how we can tweak it.
Make it fit
Yeah,
you exactly the way you want.
absolutely. That's such an incredible journey to be like searching for this thing yourself, seeing the frustration, then working in the industry, seeing it on that side as well, and being able to marry those two problems into a great solution.
Yeah,
really
there's
cool.
a big fiber festival that happens in Rhinebeck, New York. It's where all the knitters, crocheters, yarny people like to go, and they all make sweaters that look alike. They go on the hill and they take
fun.
Then they take pictures. But if everyone's making the sweater for the hill to take pictures, there's usually people my size and bigger who are just like, that sweater that everyone else is making is not going to fit me. Or I made it, but it doesn't look really good.
It's not your favorite.
Yeah, exactly. But I did it because all my friends were doing it, and now I look stupid in this thing.
And I have to wear it.
Exactly, because we all agreed to take this photo, and I'm in the back tweaking and pulling on it, and you don't want that when you're wearing a sweater. You want to put it on and just be.
Yeah.
So if you are one of those folks who are like, hey, I want to go make that sweater like all my friends, it comes in my size technically, but there's some things I want to tweak. This book will help you to figure out where you make those adjustments. And then you won't run out of yarn because you figured out how much yarn you'll need based on the math in the book.
That's amazing. And hopefully not buy more than you need either, because you've got those right numbers to work from. Because I tend to fall either in one of those camps. I like overbuy, and then I'm like, I'm not a stash lover. I know so many people love a stash, but I like to buy for a purpose and use for a purpose.
Exactly.
And so this concept is right in line with my brain.
Yeah. So if you have like one ball of yarn at home, and you're thinking of a pattern, make up a swatch, follow the instruction in the book on how to make a swatch, do all the math to figure out how much yarn you need, then go buy the yarn. So now you're in the store and you're not picking up like 20 skeins when you only need 5.
Yes. That would save me for sure.
That will save you. And then you come home and you know the pattern is going to fit. You won't run out of yarn. So now you're motivated and excited to make the thing because you know it's going to be amazing.
I love that. So is there someone in the industry or maybe a different industry that inspires you?
I get inspiration from a lot of places. I try not to follow people to copy or just to see what they're doing. But I do like Gigi Made It Gay. She is an amazing woman on social media. She talks about patterns that she's making. She's really big on orange. She's the orange lady. But she talks about different things that she's making. She talks about inspiring and motivating people, not just to knit and crochet, but in life in general. And I think for a lot of us, when we go to social media, there's like so much negativity. To see one of her posts is just like, okay.
That's so nice.
I can go back to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
She breathed into you.
And I think orange gets a bad rap.
Orange is amazing.
It's a great color.
It's a great color.
I agree.
I never used to like colors, and look at me.
Yeah, and now you're just shining. I love it.
Because corporate was black and gray, and now that I'm not in corporate, I can do whatever I want.
I love that.
Yeah.
And you've just fully embraced it.
I am.
That's so beautiful. Thank you so much, Tian, for being here and sharing your story and the info about your book. I think people will really find that valuable. Can you also let everyone know where they can find you online and on social?
Sure. My Instagram is Knit Designs by Tian. Even though I do more than knit, that's the handle I had way back in the day, so I've kept it. And you can also find me at my website, tianconnaughton.com.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here again. I truly appreciate it, and I hope I'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much.